Welcome to the Federalist Radio Hour today. I am Sean Davis, co-founder, and with me today is my colleague Mollie Hemingway, senior editor of the Federalist. Today we are going to talk about the highs and lows and ups and downs of the Democratic National Convention, in which Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have kind of introduced themselves to the world as the answer to the awful orange bad man in the White House. So Mollie, let's kick it off on this radio hour discussion of the DNC. What was the best part, in your opinion, of the whole week?
So first off, I want to just say that I love conventions and I love covering them. And I've covered a lot of Democratic and Republican conventions over the years. And a lot of reporters say they don't like them, and I have no reason to disbelieve them. But I think they are hilarious and fun. And I love seeing the people wearing the goofy hats and the, kind of fringe elements of each party. I delight in that. And so I was really sad to not have that for this convention. But because I was doing commentary on it each day, I had to watch the whole thing. And it was a grind to go through. Like normally during a convention, the video vignettes are what they put in between the action. So like you'll have a great speech, then they'll do these like pre-made video like things about something or the other, just to kill time before the next exciting thing happens. In this convention, because it was all virtual, and I assume this is how the Republican convention will go as well, the videos were the highlight. And so that's just how far the enjoyment of the convention fell. And the prepackaged like fakeness of it all was very difficult. And then there were no audiences. So they had their celebrities moderating each night, but it just felt dead because there was nobody to respond to it. So what was the question? What was the highlight?
Yeah, what was the highlight? So I thought the hardest thing they had going was like the difference between a live album and a studio album. Live album, you've got all the crowd energy, everyone's feeding off it. It's just fun to watch. You can feel the energy. Versus with the studio album, yeah, it's great. Everything is nice and tuned in and perfect, and there's no mistakes because they were able to edit everything out. But they generally feel kind of dead and flat.
This is how I can tell that you didn't actually watch much of the convention, because you just made a comparison where if it had been like a studio album, it would have been so much better than what it was. Like studio albums are still well produced. And the thing that was crazy about this, like the media are so liberal and Hollywood is so liberal. They had the entire A-team to help them with making something not be boring. And yet I have never seen like a local news program with lower production values than what we saw here. It's kind of known that Democrats do a much better job with production values at conventions. I mean, like the Obama what was the first time he won? 2008. 2008. I mean, yeah. It was like being on a Hollywood set. They had these great columns, everything. The lighting was beautiful. The air, I mean, it's just everything was great. And then you go to the convention, the Republican convention after that, and it was like there was a green screen on the back, and everybody looked really weird, and nothing was well organized. And so I expected it to be the same way this time, even though Democrats went first, which is much more difficult position to be in. I thought that the production value would be higher. It was so low, I couldn't believe it. But that's good news for Republicans that I don't think they could. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I don't think they can hit a lower standard than that.
So my favorite moment of the whole thing, which I think was both the high and the low, was that totally bizarre Buffalo Springfield song with dude in a dress and then like unfrozen Stephen Stills. Like what was happening was like, it was amazing and how awful it was. I couldn't look away.
So I had this theory that it was so bad that it wrapped back around to being good. And I ran that by some people and they all just were like, no, it was horrible. It was the worst thing I've ever heard or seen or whatever. That's a good thing for low point. I do now think that the high point is unquestionably the 13-year-old boy, Brandon Harrington, I think his name was. I probably butchered that name.
Braden or Brandon?
Braden, maybe. Yeah. So really cute kid. And he met Joe Biden a few months ago and told him that he has a stutter. And Joe explained that he did too. And so it was a really nice thing where it was like a decent, normal kid saying nice things. every other time they brought on normal people, it sort of went poorly for the Democrats. Like they brought on a guy who was a lifelong Republican and he's never been anything other than a Republican. And like the fact checkers on the Trump team within minutes were like, he's actually been a Democrat in 4 of the last 5 elections. And he's known as like a hardcore Democrat. Or the woman who, I thought the low point was definitely the woman who mocked her own father for his death, which I think was on the first night.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, what she was trying to do was something else gross, which is blaming Donald Trump for her father's death because her father went out and sang karaoke during the coronavirus and she thinks that's why he died. But she was just disparaging her own family. And I thought that was really uncool. And I noticed also that a lot of media people loved that moment, which I thought did not reflect well on them.
Well, so let's talk about the media. How would you rate the media coverage on a scale from like 0 being, you know, the least favorable possible to just giving like a 24/7 tongue bath to the Democrats? Like, where would you put the media coverage in that spectrum?
So it's another weird thing about the current moment that in 2016, I think many people in the media were still clinging to this idea that they could be treated as nonpartisans who were just trying to tell the world what was going on at a convention. And because of their own choices to respond to their failures of 2016 by becoming far, far, far worse, I don't think anyone has any delusions about whether they are not just on Team Biden, but in a real way, running Team Biden. Like they are the people who actually call the shots. It's not like they're the PR firm that handles the Democratic Party's PR. They are the more like the strategists who tell the Democratic Party how to be and what to say. So that's definitely the overarching issue with the media. But I'm actually curious what you think about this. In my mind, they weren't quite as bad as they were in 2016 for 2 reasons. In 2016, a lot of people felt very personally passionate toward Hillary Clinton. It was a weird thing if you didn't feel that way to watch all these like liberal white women in the media just crying and emoting, and it was just so meaningful to them. And I don't think you're going to get that kind of like identity politics really motivates the media and their party. Joe Biden being an older, struggling white guy doesn't generate that same level of enthusiasm. And then also just objectively speaking, it's kind of like what Donald Trump said today. Hillary Clinton is smarter than Joe Biden. Joe Biden is more likable. That's true. But there was more to pretend to be excited about with Hillary Clinton, I think, than Joe Biden's speech, which was, I mean, basically everyone was really happy that he completed it standing upright. And they were like, you see, you never should have said that he has cognitive decline, because did you notice he came out and began the speech and then he completed the speech some 20 minutes later? And so, see, you're wrong to have any concerns about his mental acuity or energy levels. And I'm not sure how well that argument goes, but insofar as that is, you know, I mean, I think that actually there's something to that, that people should remember that he can give speeches, he can do debates. It's more that daily grind that people are worried about. But yeah, I'm curious though, did you think the media were better or worse than they were in 2016?
Well, my favorite media moment came from one of my favorite reporters, Ryan Lizza. I don't know where he is now. He used to be at CNN, I think, and then he got Me Too'd out of a job there. And then he went skulking.
I think he's still there, isn't he? No. Okay, go on. Maybe
I don't know. Well, yeah, he in the interim, he was skulking around Iowa trying to stalk Devin Nunes's mother, and then everyone in the town thought he was like kind of a rapey creeper, and it freaked everyone else out. And then he got his job back, and apparently now he is just a full-on Biden booster. And he had some tweet, I don't have it in front of me, but just something like, "Oh my goodness, this is the most amazing speech anyone's ever given." And it was such a caricature of just media bias that I loved everything about it. But I liked your comparison. Yes.
I love that you love Ryan Lizza as much as I do. I've really enjoyed him for a long time. He actually came to my attention when he misdescribed a Jeb Bush quote, and I'm certainly no Jeb Bush fan, but he did it in 2015 or so, 2016 maybe, and it was so disgusting what he did that I was like, I'm going to remember that name because that's not, like a fair way to do things. But yes, and I also like that you remember that he did this. He tried to do this just vicious hit piece on Devin Nunes because, of course, Devin Nunes is the one who was like one of the few people in Congress who actually was willing to take on that absurd and delusional conspiracy theory that people like Ryan Lizza were perpetuating of treasonous collusion with Russia to steal the 2016 election. And so he tried to describe like the town folk in this town where Devin Nunes' parents live as being really weird. And I called all the people who were interviewed for the piece or who were described in the piece. And they were like, no, it is true that we were worried about him. But that's because we looked him up online and saw that he was some kind of sexual pervert, and we were just worried about our kids, so we were keeping them away. I love how journalists tell a story and then like what the real thing is. Anyway.
Well, so I loved your contrast with how the media are treating Hillary versus Biden, where they really did like her. They saw her as being part of history, and they wanted to be part of it. Like I kind of liken it to, Hillary was the car they were really excited to buy, and they were really proud to be seen driving around in it. And then Joe Biden's the car that they really just need to make another like 500 miles. Like every time they turn the keys, they're
Joe.
really hoping it's going to turn over. Like, no, not today, not today. And so there's just this total lack of enthusiasm because no one likes a clunker. And let's be honest, of the presidential candidate this year, Biden's the clunker. You don't know if he's going to make it, and there's just no excitement. So what you have instead is this completely manufactured love for it. You saw it from Ryan Lizza. Tim Alberta of Politico had, this seemingly over the top characterization as this will be the speech that defines Joe Biden's career. Never mind that he's been in politics for 50 years, 8 of them in the White House. I think he's pretty well defined before reading his speech last night. So I think the media delivered in all the ways I thought they would. They did not disappoint. They were cartoonish and absurd and ridiculous. And I love it because I love it when they show you who they are and they just stop hiding it because it's good for all of us to know.
I also like thinking through things like, I know that they're going to describe the Republican convention as a disaster, and they're going to use very negative descriptions about it. I'm just kind of excited to find out precisely how they managed to accomplish that. Like we already know what they're going to say. And even it was funny, like earlier this week, Donald Trump was giving a speech where he was describing kind of the how the left is terrorizing people, which is true. And the media were like, he painted a dark picture of everything. And it was like, have you been paying attention to the Democratic National Convention? I mean, it was actually depressing to hear what they think about this country and how irredeemable it is and evil and awful. And then they would be like kind of disjointed because then they would move into like, let's be patriotic. And it's like, you're kind of all over the place. It was very hard to see it, but lots of just depressing, horrible, like we've never been in a worse place. And I know that when you are the out party, you have to paint a dystopic picture of the in party. But it was so joyless and depressing, and the lack of people certainly added to that. Because like, if you have a crowd cheering you on while you're painting a dark picture, it can still seem a little bit better. But I know they're going to do it with Republicans, but I'm kind of curious to see how they do it.
So with the RNC coming up, they've now had the benefit of watching what the Democrats did, seeing what worked and seeing what didn't work. What do you think they're going to do in the convention? What do they have to do, and what are they going to learn from how the Democrats did this week? What should we expect from the RNC?
So first off, I just want to say that it is really unfair that Democrats had to go first because you don't know how badly it's going to be until you actually do your first night. I think that first night hit them hard and they were trying to kind of recover. They started mixing in a little bit more live stuff. And then by the last night, they had like socially distanced automobiles in a parking lot beeping their horns to kind of give the indication that people actually were excited about Joe Biden. So they did their best to improve. So all of that basic production value thing, if it's not too late, I hope that Republicans were smart enough to watch the previous party's convention and learn from that. They had already indicated, Republicans had already indicated that they were going to do the one thing that worked well for Democrats. So I already mentioned that, Braden Harrington, or I'm like probably changing his name and messing it up each time. But having real people who aren't jerks, I think is very helpful. And one of the speakers that was announced by the Republicans is Nicholas Sandmann, who was the teenager who was treated horribly by our media for the crime of being a pro-life kid at a march. He was called a racist. Having people like that, and he wasn't, having people who can demonstrate what it's like to be persecuted by the media, to be constantly falsely accused of racism. I think false accusations of racism are a big animating thing. People hate falsely being accused of racism. They despise it, and it's happening like every minute on the minute by the media. And so having someone like Nick Sandmann, who was treated horribly by the Washington Post and CNN, and they had to pay settlements because of how horribly they treated him and lied about him and didn't do journalistic due diligence, it's just a good way to explain all of the things Republicans are trying to say about the corruption of the media, about the hostility of the left and how they try to destroy people's lives, and how that hurts not, Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell or something like that, but Nicholas Sandmann and people like him. So I think that the more that they can not do what the Democrats did of like aging people who might not be with us in 4 years, and instead real Americans whose lives are affected by politics. There are a couple other things, but I'm curious what you think they should learn from the Democratic convention.
So I think one of the best things Trump has done this year was the July 3rd speech and patriotic show at Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. You had a small crowd there, but the drama of it, that backdrop, the fireworks over Mount Rushmore, the completely unapologetic defense of America, I thought it was amazing. And even though you just had a small crowd there was an energy about it. There was a brightness about it. It was upbeat. It called us to higher things by invoking what the founders had did. I hope they do something like that rather than just canned speeches looking at a camera in a room with a green screen. I really hope they don't do that. And I hope they find ways to have small crowds so you do have people feeding off the energy, and it feels a little more organic and less planned and orchestrated and scripted than just someone reading off a teleprompter in front of them.
So typically what you see with conventions is that each party, after they have their convention, they see a bounce in the polls. And I see no reason to think that would be any different this year, even though far fewer people watched the Democratic convention than would watch a normal Democratic convention. But what I thought was really interesting is literally like the morning after this high point for the Democrats of 4 years, like their 4-year high point is when they nominate the guy to run for office the next time. Democrats do not seem particularly excited right now, and Republicans seem like super jazzed, which is weird because the polls say that it's all over, but the counting, there's no way Republicans can win. Donald Trump is done, and it's just silly to say otherwise. And yet that doesn't seem to be what people actually believe, in part because they know that the polls are routinely deceptive or don't accurately paint a picture of what's going to happen. But I thought the way that Donald Trump handled his like morning after speech was pretty amazing. He went out and gave this like giddy, really excited speech where he just went through all of his accomplishments, whether it was, foreign policy in multiple ways, dealing with trade, dealing with Iran, dealing with the Middle East, dealing with China, all these different ways that he had done what he set out to do according to what he's saying, but also domestic policy, talking about judges and all sorts of other things. And then also talked about what he wanted to do in the future, and then also talked about how he thought the left was just this very serious threat that needed to be dealt with. And what was weird about it, or interesting about it, is Donald Trump, packed more policy into this hour-long speech than you saw in the entire Democratic convention. And a lot of conventional wisdom says all you need to do is run against someone unlikable. Like that's why Donald Trump won. He ran against someone unlikable. There is a truth to that helped him out a great deal. But I think people have always undervalued what his policies were and how they played a role in people voting for him. And I think it was a huge error for Democrats not to learn that lesson from 2016. Running against Donald Trump might not be sufficient. You might actually have had to give people a reason to vote for you.
Right. So in 2016, I think Hillary made a huge error when she made it about her. Her slogan was "I'm with her." It was all about Hillary, the person, Hillary's biology, first woman president. And Trump did the opposite. He didn't make it about him. He had probably the greatest, most effective campaign slogan in history, which was "Make America Great Again." And so that carried the day. That narrative beat the "I'm with her" narrative, in part because Hillary is just fundamentally so unlikable and so uncharismatic as a politician. Now, fast forward to 2020. We've had all the coronavirus. We've had all the violence. The Democrats have decided that their campaign theme, again, is going to be personalized. It's Orange Man bad. Trump gross, Trump bad, get rid of Trump, he's icky. What do you think Trump's, one sentence, couple of words, single phrase narrative is going to be? Because you can't run on I'm going to do this and this and this and this, and also I did this and this and this. There has to be kind of a unifying narrative that people can coalesce around, that's optimistic, that's easy to digest. What is that narrative going to be coming out of the RNC next week?
I don't know. I actually do think that a promises made, promises kept, let's keep going kind of thing actually can be an effective narrative. It's so weird because the views of actual Republicans are all but hidden by our major media. So you see these polls showing like 90+% of Republican voters are very pleased with Donald Trump. You do not get that in the media coverage at all whatsoever. And to win, he needs to get all those Republican votes and also reach out to independents who might align with him again. And I don't actually know. I mean, I think that it's almost more important to just have something. And I thought that we could start seeing the contours of that something in today's speech, where I thought it was effective actually to say, here's what I've done. And I think part of the reason why it's effective is it's not a story that's told. So like Barack Obama could like breathe in a westerly direction and it was well reported by the media. Well, that's not the case for Donald Trump. He does the same thing and it's impeachment. So he has to make his own case for what he's done. And success actually is is a good thing to get people energized to vote, and also talking about completion of things. So I think one thing that's interesting, having done a lot of TV during this period of time, is that when Donald Trump first came on the scene and was talking about things, whether it's border security or reorienting foreign policy from the Middle East or taking on China, just the very notion of these things was offensive and horrific for a lot of people. They couldn't even process it. And now even the most like cartoonish caricature of a never Trumper will concede, will admit that China is a huge threat. And so the fact that there's been that much movement in Washington, D.C., he had to kind of like get them there kicking, dragging, screaming, impeaching, but that there's been that much movement doesn't mean that there's been all the success that there needs to be had by far. So I think saying, okay, we finally, changed the direction of the ship and now we need to keep moving forward is not a horrible strategy, but I don't know what you think about that.
Well, so I think the biggest mistake that Democrats made in the entire convention was not mentioning the two things that are animating pretty much the entire public discussion right now, which is China, which is where the coronavirus originated, and the violence that is raging throughout blue cities across the country. I think Obama may at one point have just referred to them as peaceful. We like the peaceful protesters. But there was no discussion of China, no discussion of how to thwart them. They're clearly America's most dangerous, richest geopolitical foe. And one of the two major parties in America didn't even see fit to acknowledge their existence, let alone come up with a plan or find a way to rally people around how to deal with China. And then the refusal, which we're on month 3 now, maybe 4, of the Democrats to acknowledge the riots and denounce them. If Biden loses and if Trump's reelected, I think you'll be able to trace it directly back to not just their refusal to denounce, but just their refusal to even acknowledge what's going on. They're pretending like these are peaceful marches during the civil rights movement when they're not. They are violent, terroristic riots from people who want nothing more than to tear down the system. And I just don't see how a major party can win when they don't recognize our domestic enemies or our foreign ones.
How much are Republicans thanking their lucky stars that those things didn't happen in the convention? Because I was pretty sure when word came out that President Obama was going to be giving his speech and like referencing the American founding, I was like, he's going to do it. He's going to, like, it takes courage to do a sister soldier movement like Bill Clinton did in 1992, but didn't even need that much courage for someone like Barack Obama. Like, all he had to do was believe just a little bit in the American founding in order to condemn people who say that the whole system must be burned down and rebuilt in rejection of the American founding. And he couldn't do it. And like, if he had done it, and if that had then been echoed also, like if he'd given permission to the party to condemn the violence of their street action side of their party, oh my gosh, they would have been so effective. And then that would have given everybody else like permission to, they could have talked about it and done it without getting in trouble. He couldn't do it. He didn't do it. And I think Republicans have to just be so, so grateful. Sort of similar to China. Obviously, they wanted to make coronavirus, a global pandemic, somehow be the fault of the bad orange man. So they couldn't mention where it came from. They couldn't mention the threat China poses. It just didn't work. And so they kind of praised the Iraq War and the people who mismanaged it. And they were like, guys, the people who mismanaged the Iraq War when they were Republicans, they're now with us. I mean, I think a lot of Republicans who really care about foreign policy, who want a strong national defense, who want us to go and win wars and win them in a way that makes sense and decisively and with like a rational reason for why we're there and what we hope to get out of it and all that. I think they're like, you guys who mismanaged these wars and used our party to destroy our party so that you could do this, you are more than welcome to move over to the Democratic Party. Like, we are so happy for you to go over there. And then we can be the party where we, kill bad guys, we kill the terrorists who are killing our people, and we don't get involved in literally 20-year wars without clear definitions of success.
Well, Mollie, this was an awesome discussion. Thank you for coming on, talking about the highs and lows and joys of the DNC. For the Federalist Radio Hour, I'm Sean Davis, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.